Did he resume?
I
Oh,
did. Welcome,
oh,
ladies and gentlemen, to the WAN Show. We have a fantastic show for you guys today. Actually, lots of fun topics today. We're going to be talking through AMD's Zen 5 Strix Point, which is apparently going to be a 3 nanometer processor. I mean, that is not many nanometers. That's
that is
like,
a
like
very low amount of
that's a
nanometers.
few nanometers. That's it. There's some pretty big news on the gaming monitor front. There's going to be the first 390 hertz monitor coming. And what else we got today?
Much Samsung Wow plus 350 Ti. Different
Ooh.
screens. Very interesting different screens.
Mm-hmm.
Also, games. Are your games stuttering at home? Are you having stuttering issues?
Stuttering.
Blame Windows. Nothing else. Only Windows.
Yeah,
Specifically Bill
we'll
Gates.
talk about that. Are we going to do the whole like base camp imploding conversation?
We can.
All right. Yeah, we'll talk about that later. Let's
We'll
roll
tiptoe
the
around
intro.
that topic.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
seems like it might be a tender topic.
Yeah.
Tender. Yeah. Get tendies.
Yeah.
Got a lot of great sponsors for y'all today as well. NordPass, as well as MSI and Ridge Wallet are all sponsoring the WAN Show today. Why don't we jump right into our headline topic? I can't remember what it is. Yes, AMD is not ripping off Intel. Allow me to explain. It would be pretty
Yes.
easy to say, oh, hey, wait, hold on a second. I mean, AMD's releasing a hybrid CPU. That just sounds a lot like Intel Alder Lake, which is the code name for their 12th generation Core Series processors, which are going to use use high performance Golden Cove cores alongside power saving Gracemont cores, with the idea being that you get performance when you need it and power saving when you don't. But in fact, Intel is not the first one to have that idea, and there's a whole lot else going on with their Zen 5 architecture that has really nothing to do with what Intel's doing. So first things first, Zen 5 will apparently be based on TSMC3's N3 process node, which I think they're just kind of changing up the nomenclature on us. I actually didn't know that they call them, okay, maybe they're not, because they're referring to their 7 nanometer as N7. So I've just never heard that branding for it before, go figure. So their N3 process node is 2 full nodes away from AMD's current 7 nanometer node with TSMC, and it's claimed to be 1.7 times as dense as 5 nanometer, which is itself 1.8 times as dense as 7 nanometer. And we're expecting somewhere in the neighborhood of a 50+% increase in power efficiency compared to 7 nanometer. And wow, so 15% faster than 15% faster. So what would that be? Something like 35 or so percent faster than 7 nanometer as well. Whew. Now, AMD has a tendency to do major architecture changes in their odd-numbered releases. So Zen 5 is expected to be a big update over Zen 4 with significant memory subsystem changes, but the big new feature is, of course, Big Little, or hybrid chip design. And we've seen this before in ARM CPUs in particular, or SoCs, I guess I should say, because there's a lot more than just a CPU in them. But your phone, assuming you have one that was built in, I don't know, Luke, 5 years, 6, 7?
Quite a while.
When did
Yeah.
when did the first Big Little ARM designs show up? First released.
Looking it up.
I'm Googling this. ARM Big Little. Here we go. Heterogeneous, blah, blah, etc. Come on, give me a year, ladies and gentlemen. Give me a year. I don't know. It doesn't matter. We're not going to be able to do that. But it's been around for a while in mobile, with the main benefit being that you can shut off, or at least mostly shut off, those big, powerful cores when you're doing something like periodically checking for notifications for email or whatever. And then when it's time to retouch a photo, then boom, the heavy cores kick in and you're ready to rock. And Apple's M1 very recently was the first to bring this to the desktop. Intel will follow according to their roadmap later this year, and then Zen 5 will apparently rock. Interesting. So the code name for the Zen 5 APU is going to be Strix Point. It makes total sense that this is something that would be more of an APU focused feature, because that's the kind of CPU. See, AMD kills me. An APU is the kind of CPU. So no, according to AMD, it's an APU. According to Intel, it's a CPU, because most of their consumer chips just have graphics on them anyway. But that's what makes something an APU, according to AMD. So an APU is the kind of CPU that would end up in something like an office computer. And you guys might not know this, but there are some new efficiency standards coming, particularly in places like Japan, that are going to force like mass production computers to implement new power saving ideas, like integrating the 12 volt to 5 and 3.3 volt conversion on, sorry, did I say, so moving that DC to DC conversion onto the motherboard instead of doing it in the power supply. We saw this with Intel's 12VO like prototype power supply and some ASRock board, and it made a huge difference. It absolutely blew me away how much of a difference it made. And doing something like this, Big Little, is going to help meet those kinds of efficiency standards, because one of the big things that it improved upon was idle efficiency. So actually, when that system was under load, the power consumption was relatively close to just a normal system, because when you're under load, the things that kick in are going to be your CPU and your GPU. Both of those are powered predominantly off of 12 volt, but everything else is running all the time. And so it's your idle power consumption where you're going to actually save by not having those low voltage lines, where you're going to, the lower the voltage is, the less efficient it is. That's why the power lines coming into your house, for example, or, well, not into your house, because the ones coming into your house are actually typically around the same voltage as what your house actually runs. But the ones coming into the substation in your neighborhood run at much higher voltage than the lines that are going to your house, because it's just way less efficient to run at low voltages. So this is going to help with that, because AMD is going to have these CPUs that will absolutely sip power when they're not really doing anything. And then we'll still have, hopefully, the horses. I mean, 8 big cores is still pretty good. I mean, we're talking, oh yeah, and also mobile. So they'll have decent GPUs built right into the CPU. That's what makes it an APU. they'll have these big little CPU cores, so they will sip power, and they will, what was the other thing I was going to say? Yeah, well, basically, I guess that's it. So they have an expected release date of 2024. And as for naming, AMD's Zen 3 Plus refresh, codenamed Warhol, is rumored to be delayed or canceled, with an accelerated Zen 4 launch instead. So in terms of branding, Zen 3 refresh, Ryzen 6000, Zen 4 and Zen 5, then Ryzen 7 and 8000, and then maybe Zen 3 refresh would be like XT, like 5000 XT, and then Zen 4 and 5 are 6 and 7000. We don't know. I really wish that AMD hadn't screwed things up, 20 years ago with their Plus branding, because that would have made it really simple these days, right, Luke? They could have just gone, okay,
It was good.
yeah, every new Zen architecture, you get a new 1000 number, and then every Plus architecture, you put a plus at the end. But they screwed it up. They screwed it up. They had pluses at the end of 4-digit numbers way back then, and that wasn't what it meant. So now it's all ruined. Not that there's any continuity in these product naming schemes anyway. I mean, they're clearly all making it up as they go along. I mean, what is RTX? I mean, it's having cores.
That one's not too bad.
Real-time ray tracing.
That was kind of okay, actually.
Okay, fine.
So I'm reading in here a lot of talk about desktop processors, but this seems way more like a mobile play. What do you think?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that's where you're going to get the vast majority of the benefits. So being able to kick in those high performance cores when it's time to hook up an external GPU and play a game, but being able to run on those 4 cores while you're, editing a text document in Google Docs or something like that is pretty much the only chance that x86 has of getting competitive with ARM in laptops,
Yeah.
which all of a sudden is going to be a freaking thing. I mean, we talked about this last week. Not only is ARM already a thing in notebooks, I mean, it's not like Qualcomm doesn't have notebook design wins that are out there, although I don't think anyone cares about them. But more importantly, I mean, NVIDIA is clearly working on a notebook CPU that is going to be ARM-based. So once that starts to happen, I mean, Apple has already made the transition to ARM for mobile and desktops. Well, Apple's moving to ARM with everything. All of a sudden, the barbarians are at the gates, x86. Like, you got to catch up here. It's been years since Big Little existed on ARM. I'm assuming there are technical challenges that made it very difficult, but that doesn't change the fact that you're just like gonna have to do it.
Yeah.
Now, in terms of what Intel's gonna have to compete, a mobile Alder Lake processor has actually already leaked on Geekbench with 6 big and 8 little cores, a base frequency of 800 megahertz, and a max frequency of 4.7 gigahertz. Rumors suggest that the desktop SKU will be a 16-core layout with an 8+8 configuration, which means that Intel might not be performance competitive with AMD on the desktop for at least another year. I mean,
I think it's going to be more than that.
Well, I said at least.
Yeah.
In my defense, I put a lot of emphasis on the at least.
Yeah. Okay, I'll give you that. But yeah, I think it's going to be a while.
So it's rumored to support, or it's not rumored, it's like almost certain to support DDR5. So it's going to come on a new LGA 1700 socket, which will be totally incompatible with current coolers. I mean, it was a good run. You know, you can criticize Intel all you want for changing their board, making you change your board every time you want to upgrade your CPU or whatever. But one thing they have done really well is maintained cooler compatibility for, I mean, when did Clarkdale come out? Intel Clarkdale CPU launch. That was in 2010. For over 10 years, you've been able to reuse your Intel CPU, your like aftermarket Intel CPU.
Probably haven't even really thought about it.
That's pretty cool. Now, AMD, depending on how your cooler manufacturer implemented their compatibility with AMD, AMD actually can go back even farther. So if you have an AMD cooler that uses the clips around the plastic brackets around the socket, like just the little hooks, you can go all the way back to socket 754, which launched in 2003. So Intel managed, or AMD is going on 15 years pretty soon of cooler compatibility.
It does kind of help when you take essentially a sabbatical in the middle of that, though.
That's true. That's true. There was a bit of a gap in the like having CPUs that anyone cared about. Excuse me. And to be clear, AMD's like compatibility, unless if you don't use the little hooks, is no, that's a mess, because socket 754 and, if I recall correctly, 939 both used 2 screws, like 2 bolts through the board into the back plate, and then AM whatever started being 4, and then AM4 actually moved them, if I recall correctly. So it's like 2 this way and like 2 kind of like that. And then of course there's the enthusiast socket, Threadripper, you know, all that kind of stuff that's not compatible. But then that was true on Intel as well. On the server side, the mounting holes did move around a fair bit in that time period. This is a long aside, not very important. The new socket will need additional pins to support USB 4 and PCI Express Gen 5. And AMD will also be changing sockets because, you know, these new connectivity standards. So AM4 is going away, but we have no information about what AM5 might look like. And it's actually been rumored that AMD might go LGA instead of sticking with pins, which, I mean, Luke, how do you feel about that, Luke? I mean, you've had to personally repair the pins on an AM4 CPU.
I'm upset. I had to deal with the struggles. Everyone else should have to deal with it too. No, I think that's a good thing.
Can I just take a moment to talk about what a big load of horse that argument is?
Yeah, it's terrible.
Because you hear it, you hear it
that's
for
why I
so
pulled it
many
back as
things.
soon as
You know,
I could.
we
Yeah.
shouldn't we shouldn't forgive any student loan debt because, you know, I had to pay it. Like, never mind that, you know, your generation's student loans were a fraction of what they are now. Not to
Not
mention
even
that
comparable.
you didn't have
Yeah.
to go nearly as deep into your post-secondary education in order to have meaningful credentials. Like, okay, whoa, this could be a very long aside, but like, you know, it's very frustrating to me that, you know, in the 60s, in the 70s, a high school diploma actually was considered a job credential. Now it's basically considered, you know, uncomfortable toilet paper. And if you don't have a bachelor's degree, don't even bother for a lot of positions. And then in the same way, what used to be a bachelor's degree type of position back in the, you know, mid to latter part of the 20th century, now they're going to ask for a master's. So on the one hand, school costs have gone like this, and the requirement for credentials has gone like this. So not only does this generation, the Zoomer generation, have to deal with the fact that they had to pay more for school, they had to pay for it longer, their rent was more expensive, the general cost of living is way higher. Like, it's here I am going on a very, this is a very political, it's a political conversation, Luke. We're starting a political conversation here, but to me, just like, you know, having a functioning society where people can afford to live based on, you know, going to work and not be starving is not political. That's just basic.
Some people are kind of pushing against those aspects. Like, some people are trying to make sure that they weigh portfolios and examples of work quite highly during hiring processes and stuff.
Sure, I mean, we do, but not everyone does.
Yeah. No, for sure. And it is harder. Like, I understand why someone trying to be lazy wouldn't want to do that, because like, it's pretty easy to go into someone's resume and be like, yep, that's a bachelor from a reputable school. Cool.
I mean,
check mark,
except that you might, that person, you know, because
or whatever.
A lot of, just because a school is reputable doesn't mean that that program wasn't basically an adult daycare. You know, we've hired people, or not hired, we have interviewed people based on their credentials who ended up being absolute hot garbage that we would never consider hiring. So
yeah, so have I.
This is great. McGregor M95 says, I have this conversation with my father once a week. And based on your username, I'm guessing you're a Zoomer, born in 95. Yeah, it sounds about right. Because it's just, it's ridiculous. Like, I'm sitting here, I tweeted about this a little while ago. It shouldn't be a controversial hot take that I want my kids to be able to afford to live in the city that they grew up in. You know what I mean? Like, why is that all of a sudden a radical idea?
I just, you hear stories about like, oh yeah, when I went to university, I like paid for my whole degree, didn't have student loans when I came out of it, lived in a decently large basement suite by myself, and worked a part-time job like on the weekends to pay for it all. And it's just like, what? What fantasy land did you live in?
Yeah, it's called the 80s, Luke.
Yeah.
Well,
we're pretty far off of 3 nanometer process nodes, though. I will say.
Yeah. Well, you know what? It's not that far off of one of the other topics that we said that. Okay, hold on a second. No. That is incorrect. Someone in the Twitch chat's like, it all comes down to overpopulation. No, it doesn't. No, it comes down to, and I'm not singling out any individuals, it comes down to a particular generation of people swooping in like locusts, consuming absolutely everything in their path, and then putting up obstacles and barriers to make sure that nobody else can do the same thing. I mean, in the 60s, in the 70s, zoning, like city zoning, was hardly a thing. So if you needed to, you know, build a bunch of inexpensive housing, you basically just YOLO'd it, and housing was affordable. Now, to be clear, a lot of the protections that are put in place to, you know, prevent soil erosion into rivers and to make sure that, you know, forest replanting is more sustainable, or like whatever, a lot of that makes sense, but a lot of it doesn't. A lot of the time, you end up with a bunch of NIMBY that prevents making things more affordable, because a certain generation has, particularly here in Canada, the vast majority of their wealth tied up in real estate and doesn't want to see it impacted because that's what they banked on. But unfortunately, it is basically a vampiric effect on the next generation, because them holding on to that wealth means that the next generation is basically just throwing all their money away on rent and interest payments. So I'm sorry, this has become, yeah. And like Travona says,
there was an article that came out fairly recently that
Yeah.
was like, I don't remember if it was millennials or what category it was, but it was like, you might just have to wait for your inheritance to be able to buy a house. And it was like,
I had a really, I moved recently, as you know. So I had a very interesting conversation with a mortgage broker recently. Not because we ended up using a mortgage broker, because middlemen never actually are a better deal. They're just really useful for comparison shopping and putting pressure on the actual banks that actually issue the mortgages. So anyway, had a really interesting conversation that basically went, yeah, like in this housing boom that's been going on in Canada right now, probably a solid, and it turns out the real numbers, because there's an article that came out recently that had sort of some real numbers, but how they felt anecdotally was about half of the people buying houses at these ludicrous prices. Like Canadian housing has gone up like 23% in the last year, something stupid like that.
Bonkers, yeah.
And to be clear,
kind of
Canada ain't overpopulated. All right.
Not even close.
Let's just cut off that conversation right about now.
I actually want to give two quick things to it. Sorry.
Yeah.
If you look at a population map of Canada, it's very funny, because essentially the entire population is a very, very thin line against the US border. All the way across Canada. It's just this really thin line. The other one is we still, as far as I know, have less people in all of Canada than just California. So, sorry.
It's way less. Yeah, it's way less. So anyway, they were saying about half of the people buying houses at these ridiculous prices were only able to afford the down payments because the previous generation, that shall not be named, views housing as this infallible sort of investment that basically carried them through their entire lives, because as wages eroded relative to the cost of living, they were able to lean on the equity that was built up in these home investments. Yeah, home is supposed to be a place to live. It's not supposed to be your primary form of investment. That's a whole other conversation. But they believe so strongly in it, and they are leaving this money to the younger generation and then kind of dumping it right back into this, propping up this bubble. It's horrifying, and it's not tech related. No one seems to care so far, but Travonis says, the rich like being rich, Linus. That's why it is the way it is. The funny thing about it, though, is it's not, this particular problem is not necessarily the rich. We're talking about people who are house rich. That doesn't necessarily mean, just because someone's net worth is $1 million does not mean that they actually have $1 million of liquidity. Like when you live in a house that is worth $1 million, if everyone, say for example, were to get old and pass away, within a short span of time, that value has to depreciate unless something kind of weird and crazy happens in order to prop it up. You don't actually have that cash. So you need somewhere to live. So when you sell it, you have to put it right back into somewhere to live. Or when you sell it, a bunch of others are going to sell, like from the same cohort, are going to sell it around the same time, and there's going to have to be some kind of crash. So just saying the rich is too simplistic, but I also understand where this resentment comes from, because you've got literal generations of people between the millennials and Zoomers now that see the very idea of being able to own a detached home as for the rich. It wasn't even like that long ago. When my wife and I bought our house, it was 11 years ago. Luke, do you know how much we paid for our house? Which I have heard people call a mansion in YouTube comments.
Yeah.
It's not a mansion. It's about 2,200 square feet. It's not actually that big for a detached home. It has a really nice yard, though, which is because it was built in the 80s, back when you could build houses with a yard and actually make money as a developer. It's a whole other conversation. But we paid 580,000 Canadian dollars. So that's around like 475 US at the current exchange rate. That's not entirely unreasonable. Nowadays, you'd be lucky to get a townhouse, and that would be farther out of the city at half the size for that money. It has only been 11 years. It's not sustainable. It's absolutely disgusting. I am rooting for a housing crash. I can't wait for it. Because like when I say I want my kids to be able to afford to live in this city, I'm speaking figuratively. My kids' parents will be able to help them out. That's the way it is. We've been very lucky. We've worked very hard. We've had a great degree of success. My kids aren't going anywhere unless they want to. But it's not just about that. What about their whole way of living? Yeah, Nacho Warrior, we can talk about that too. It's a whole separate issue. The whole investors causing serious problems and the whole fact that you've got, I think it's, oh man, what is it? Like 1 in every 5 homeowners in Vancouver owns more than one home. That's pretty problematic. Anyway,
Yeah,
I'm talking about like the way of living. What if my kids could afford to stay here, but literally everyone they ever knew in their entire life moved away because they cannot afford to be here? Like,
and it makes a ton of sense to move away.
One of my best friends in high school lives on the island now because, and get this, he's a doctor. I'm not talking he has a PhD in like, you know, mineral studies or something. Like he is a medical doctor practicing. And he was like, yep, this makes no sense. See you later. Now he's a king of pragmatism. So even though he could afford to live here, he chooses not to because it doesn't make any sense. You know, my sister-in-law no longer lives in the city. That means my kids don't see their cousins. So the effects of the lack of affordability are far-reaching. Anyway, why don't we talk about something else for a little bit? The first 390 hertz monitor is coming. Should we talk about the first 390 hertz monitor?
Sure, let's
All right, hit me. What are the deets? Hit me with the deets.
Not that you're going to be able to buy a graphics card that can run it, but the Acer Nitro XV2 is a 360 hertz IPS panel that can overclock to a whopping 390 hertz. It's 1080p, but fast as heck, and it's 24.5 inches. It has a 0.5 to 1 ms response time, and its rumored price is to be $730 US. Acer pulls away from the competition by an extra 30 hertz. There are other 360 hertz, but this is the first one that can like officially OC to 390. Asus has an ROG Swift that runs at 360, and there's the Alienware 25 gaming monitor as well. Since it requires an overclock, it might not be guaranteed to be 100% stable, but considering they're saying like it can overclock to 390, I think it'd be pretty surprising if it wasn't too bad. Yeah.
So, big deal. I'm not trying to be a hater, but
I'm not about to be too interested in going back to 1080p. That's one thing for me. I do know for a fact there will definitely be CS:GO people
100%.
That'll be all over this.
100%.
For sure.
The thing about it is that 30 hertz is a lot. You know, 30 times per second.
But 30 hertz at that level.
When you go from 60 hertz to 90 hertz, you are talking about a difference in like, what does that work out to? About 5 milliseconds. Potentially, you could get information 5 milliseconds earlier. I mean, that's the difference for a lot of people between gaming on a local area network and on like an internet connected server. This is a significant difference.
Oh yeah, for sure.
When you go from, one moment, please. Let me bring up my calculator here. Okay, so when you go from 390 to, or from 360 to 390, it is an 8% improvement, which by the time you're at 360, so hold on one moment, please. Let's take 1 second divided by 360. So that is about 2.7 milliseconds per frame. I think I'm doing the math right here. And then, so hold on, times 0.92, because we've got it. Okay, so it's 2.55 milliseconds per frame. So we're talking about literally a fraction of a millisecond of difference. Now, less latency, definitely more better. But I would be very surprised. And I'm not.
Yeah, he's not saying it's worse.
No, no.
You're getting into pretty slim margins. This isn't a monitor for most people.
Yes.
Like I pointed out, like the Counter-Strike fanatics are probably going to go for it, and I hope they love it. But yeah, this is not like, if you're like, yeah, I'm having a lot of fun trying to get to gold in Apex Legends. Silver's been really entertaining. Like, it probably doesn't matter. Don't worry about it too much.
I mean, I have a hard time imagining who this would matter for, but I'm never gonna hate on like faster computers for the sake of faster computers.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Actually.
Yeah, push the limit, right?
It didn't even occur to me to look into what refresh rate the new M1 Max iMacs are running at. I would love to see Apple just kind of put pressure on the rest of the industry to move to high refresh rate displays and everything. They did it on the iPad Pro, and I was like, oh yeah, heck yeah, man, it's happening. And then they just didn't.
Kind of dropped it. Yeah.
They completely dropped it. iPhone, Mac, everything. They're like, yeah, that was pretty cool. We got a lot of really great feedback for the hyper responsiveness of this display. Put that in my back pocket. Think about it. Consider
Maybe pull
it.
that out one day when we need some good sentiment. We'll leave it for now.
A few years from now, we'll talk about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, Youssef says we're at diminishing returns at 360 hertz. Oh, 100%. I mean,
quite notably, yeah.
360 hertz does feel significantly smoother, I would say. I would say that's where I expect to see the biggest difference going forward. Not in terms of responsiveness anymore, but in terms of animation smoothness. Because you got to remember, your eyes don't see in frames per second. That question of how many FPS does the eye see? It's not correct. The way the eye sees is not like that. The pink goo that lives behind them doesn't process in frames. It actually can do so much. The fact that we can display content in frames per second and see it as smooth is because of the magic goo. So the way that we see is actually dependent on what we're looking at. For example, we are far more sensitive to motion, for example, in our peripheral vision compared to things that are stationary. That's not something that you can express as frames per second. So my expectation is that, especially as we move to OLED displays and as refresh rates get to the 500 hertz or 1000 hertz range, is we're going to see a difference in our ability to track an opponent or track a target based on the clarity of the image and the smoothness of the animation, as opposed to it actually being about getting a competitive edge by seeing your opponent or seeing the information before your opponent does. We should probably talk about our sponsors at some point here. Starting with
what? Sorry, just before you go into it, that monitor that you had at the office when we were doing my
360.
Build, 360. Yeah.
That
so
was
mine,
smooth, weren't it?
Mine is 144.
Yeah.
And that's okay. So that's a big jump, but that was very noticeable.
Yes.
So, yeah, I don't know.
Very noticeable. It made you kind of want one like that, didn't it?
It did, but I also don't want a game at 1080p.
No 1080p.
So maybe in the future sometime.
Yep. We need one more DisplayPort refresh, and then we'll be able to do really high refresh rate 1440p displays, and that will be sick.
That'll be killer. Yeah.
All right. NordPass. Thanks to NordPass for sponsoring today's show. It's basically impossible to remember all the complex and safe passwords you need by memory alone, so you can keep your private information safe in an easy and secure way with NordPass. It's created by the cybersecurity experts at Nord and can recognize your favorite sites and autofill your information. It's got a built-in password generator to make new complex passwords for you, and it allows you to import passwords that were saved by your web browser or import CSV files from your old password manager. It features data breach alerts, password health reports, and you can have up to 6 active devices. And NordPass uses zero-knowledge architecture, so your data is encrypted on your device before it reaches NordPass's servers for backup and sync. For a limited time, get 70% off a 2-year NordPass premium plan with an extra month for free. So why wait? Start protecting your passwords today at nordpass.com/WAN and use offer code WAN. The show is also brought to you by Ridge Wallet. Luke, stop. You got to stop carrying around pointless items like hotel room keys. You know, yeah, you're muted, by the way. Old hotel room keys.
Oh, okay.
Nobody has old hotel room keys anymore because nobody travels. But I mean,
I was going to say, how long did it take you into the pandemic to actually be rid of all of those?
I always forget to return them. Always. Always. Because most hotels just have like zero interaction checkout now, right?
Yeah.
Like I remember traveling somewhere with someone and we were on our way down to the lobby and they like went to line up at the desk and I was like, what are you doing? They're like, oh, I'm checking out. I'm like, nobody checks out. What year is it? You just leave. And then they go to clean the room and you're not there and they don't bill you for it. It's fine. I always wondered why you have to check out. I mean, I guess if you need to, settle a room service tab or something like that, but
now they have your credit card.
They have your credit card.
Yeah.
And that's been true for 10 years. Anyway, Ridge Wallet helps you carry less. They use 2 metal plates that are bound by a strong elastic band to keep your cards tightly together, but still accessible. They're RFID blocking, they've got a lifetime guarantee, and they're available in aluminum, carbon fiber, and titanium. And Ridge doesn't sell just wallets. They have battery banks, bags, smartphone covers, and more. And you can use code WAN to save 10% at ridge.com/WAN. Finally, the show is brought to you by the MSI Meg 27 4QRF-QD. MSI, thank you for sponsoring the show. Holy crap, fix your product naming. The Meg 274 QRF-QD is a 27-inch monitor. Okay, so that's where the 27 comes in. MAG is like MSI something gaming, I think. So you got 27 for 27-inch, okay? And then it's 2560 by 1440. So that's probably where the QD at the end comes in because that's like quad HD, okay? It runs at 165 hertz with 1 millisecond gray to gray response times. I don't know where that works into 274 QRF, but that's okay. It's got quantum dot. Oh, that's probably the QD at the end. So the Q in the beginning part is probably for quad HD resolution. Okay, it's G-Sync compatible. There's no G in the product name, but that's okay. And
is it though?
It's IPS. It's IPS, height adjustable arm. Okay, in all seriousness, very high performance monitor, great colors, great pixel response times, nice fast refresh rate, 165 hertz. Go check it out. And we're going to have a link down below, okay, lmg.gg/MSI Meg. So you don't have to remember that it's called the Meg 274 QRF-QD. Oh, what just happened? Oops, sorry about that. All right, why don't we jump into our next big topic for the day? Should we get political again, Luke? Do you want to get political?
Yeah, I was trying to prep for it.
Let's talk about what happened at Basecamp. First of all, what is Basecamp?
They make a few different things. I think probably most notably as of late would be Hey, the email thing.
Yeah.
And that would be because of the controversy that they had with, I believe it was specifically Apple, but it was like the cut that mobile platforms are taking. So you've probably heard of them. We've talked about them on the WAN show before because of their Hey email app, but they have also done other things. It's not just that.
Okay. And what's going on at Basecamp right now?
Okay, so this has been interesting to track because the amount of subtweeting that has gone on around this has been immense. And what I mean by that is people just like tweeting angrily but not explaining why. I've noticed over the last few days that my feed, I follow a lot of developers and stuff, my feed has exploded, and it actually took me a while to get to the bottom of what was going on. So on Monday, Basecamp CEO published a blog post where he outlined a bunch of changes in the company. And by a bunch, I genuinely mean like a lot.
They don't even seem to be all like related. Like that's kind of the bizarre thing about this to me. Well, it's one of the bizarre things. Carry on.
They're kind of all over the place. And he actually defines it as a version change. So like a version change of the company. Like this is a big, sweeping, massive change. He breaks it down into a variety of sections. So I'm actually going to skip the first one because that's the one that it seems like most people have problems with. And I'm going to go to the more simple ones first. So no forgetting what we do here. He says, we make project management, team communication, and email software. We are not a social impact company, blah, 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 blah. That bothered some people for sure. No more 360 reviews. That's talking about like essentially they're not going to do peer feedback reviews. They're going to do direct managerial reviews. No more lingering or dwelling on past decisions, which is a really fun company rule. Good luck with that one.
What does that even mean?
We've become a bit too precious with decision making over the last few years, either by wallowing in indecisiveness, worrying ourselves into overthinking things. Blah, blah, blah. Yeah, okay. It's for sure. It's a problem. You don't want to get stuck like scared of making decisions because of past problems. But
Sure.
like, wow, a bit of an interesting company rule to not linger on past decisions. No more committees. For nearly all of our 21-year existence, we were proudly committee-free, no big working groups making big decisions or blah, 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 essentially no big committees. No more paternalistic benefits. And this took me a second. I literally had to Google this. Essentially, they used to have a fund. They offered a fitness benefit, a wellness allowance, a farmer's market share, continuing education allowances, like all this other kind of stuff,
Okay.
and they're cutting that off. They are introducing a 10% profit sharing plan, but they don't. Before it was like, we want to help you spend in these ways, and they're canning that. They're just doing the 10% profit sharing plan. Now here's the big one. This is the one that seems to have lit most of the fires. There's quite a few things in here that people are going to get pretty aggravated about for sure.
Yeah.
But this one seems to be the bonfire out of all the. Okay, can you relax? Can you calm down? This one seems to be the bonfire out of all the other small fires. No more societal and political discussions on our company Basecamp account. Today's social and political waters are especially choppy. Sensitivities are at 11, and every discussion remotely related to politics, advocacy, or society at large quickly spins away from pleasant. Blah, 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 blah.
Okay.
Yeah. So these were all pretty impactful to a lot of employees at Basecamp because a lot of these things seem to have. This is all what I've gleaned from just trying to read people's Twitter posts and whatnot about it. A lot of these things seem to have defined people's experiences at Basecamp. It's a big part of the reason why they worked there.
Yeah.
And now there have been
sweeping
rules.
Changes.
Yeah,
basically.
yeah. So there was something pretty interesting that was done. I don't know if this was expected. Maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. The CEO offered a generous severance for those that didn't agree with him. Which, I mean, sure, why not? But a third of the company just straight up quit after he did that. Again, maybe that was kind of the goal.
Maybe it was.
Maybe it wasn't. I don't know. Yeah.
I mean, here's a really challenging thing is how do you draw the line between what's political and what's not? I mean, I saw an interesting billboard the other day. I happened to be on the phone with my wife while I was driving in to play badminton, and on speaker, of course. So I was just chatting with her, and I saw this billboard that was like a hashtag Stop Asian Hate billboard. And like, I'm talking to her about this, and we're just speaking very candidly. I'm like, obviously I agree with the sentiment, but what are the odds that a billboard, is going to take some racist jackass and make them reflect and go, oh, you know what? Wow, maybe skin color is just a color and not actually like meaningful. And we might as well divide people by how tall they are, or the diameter of their nostrils, or any other number of like inane ways to divide people into groups. Like, we could just as easily do it by hair color and whatever. Like, it's gonna make them just, oh wow, if only if only I had seen that billboard earlier in my life, it would have changed the way that I
That would
feel.
have been so different.
And anyway, the other part of the billboard, so it had the hashtag on it, and then it also just said, you know, racism is not an opinion. And it's like, yeah, that's true. That's a conversation that for whatever reason we have to have now, I guess, is that like sort of being an is that's not an opinion. That's just like being a jerk. And
Yeah.
you know, yes, your you know, free speech or whatever in the West, it definitely allows you to say a lot of things that you can say, but it doesn't mean that there's no consequences for them. It just means that the government can't lock you up for speaking against the government. That's like actually what that means. So being a jerk is like still bad and has always been bad. But
Societal repercussions.
coming back to the base camp conversation, that's where I think that this is, I don't know, this is, it's complicated, but it's also not that complicated, where the justification for this seems to be that it's very difficult to draw these lines between what's political and what's not political. But to me, like being a jerk or being intolerant of others is not political. That's just like being a jerk.
And the point, which
Yeah.
I think might have gotten lost in the weeds somewhere, but the
Sure.
point, not by us, to be clear, I just think in general, the point, the CEO's reasoning was that discussion of political topics was a major distraction.
And
It sounds
so
like he just wanted people to focus on their work more.
and that may be a fair point. Like if you've got, you know, literally you have a whole group of people that are dedicated to being the committee on, you know, whatever conversation
Insert
that
topic
has
here, sure.
quite frankly absolutely nothing to do with work. You know, like a short people's, you know, equal rights committee or something like that. I picked that not because I think short people particularly need better rights. By the way, they are actually a disadvantaged group, just saying. I picked that because it's an easy one for me to pick on because I am below average height. Anyway, the point is, maybe there's this committee and all the people that are on this committee spend like 30% of their time like doing committee things that have absolutely nothing to do with improving their apps and services. I don't know. Maybe it really was a significant problem. And maybe the management of the company, although quite a few high-level people did leave, maybe the management of the company sees this third of them leaving as a boon. I don't know. But to me, the line between what's political and what is not political isn't really that complicated. But we also have a pretty homogeneous culture at Linus Media Group for the most part. And when I say homogeneous culture, I don't necessarily mean things like skin color. I mean that we don't have debates in the hallways about, you know, whether certain groups of people should be allowed to, you know, go there or whatever. I mean, obviously as CEO, I don't necessarily see everyone's true colors, but certainly nobody has had the cojones to be outwardly, you know, discriminatory when I'm present. So I don't know. It just hasn't been a problem. It hasn't seemed that complicated.
Yeah, there isn't a lot of debate necessarily there. And I have no idea what goes on at that company. But I would say, just like reading this blog, this Changes at Basecamp blog, it's weird. It's really weird. Like even including like the no more lingering or dwelling on past decisions. Like I think there's other ways. If this is the type of stuff you're trying to get across, if you're like, wow, we're really all over the place and this has become like a social camp more than a workspace and like all this other kind of stuff, I think you can communicate those types of things and try to drive that change in way different ways than this. I think this was a really horrible way of doing it. Again, maybe he wanted people to leave.
It's possible. But the thing is, like,
I don't know.
I mean, saying it like that, it's not like I'm some kind of management guru or human resources expert or anything like that. But framing something negatively is almost never the way to get people on your side. What you need to say is, we need to improve our decisiveness. You know, that's your, you know, your manager speak or whatever. You can't say, we need to stop questioning my, you know, freaking decisions. That's always gonna rub people the wrong way,
like,
and no matter how long your history is. Luke,
that's why, like,
no, Luke, stop. We're not gonna question what I just said. There's no debate.
It, Linus, come on. There was something you said a long time ago, which kind of goes in line with number 4. You brought up, I don't remember exactly how you said it, so I'm going to misquote the heck out of you, but it was something along the lines of like, if we make a decision, like if we're in a room with a group of people and we need to make a decision on how we're going to do something, you're on board. Like, this is a team. You can make your arguments, but ultimately we need to come up with the best possible solution as a team and run with it. And if it doesn't really work out, pointing back and being like, well, I didn't like how, is useless. And you just need to try to like drive and improve it in the future. And you said it much better than that, but like it was essentially like, you need to be a part of the team and not just like
complaining. Don't be a complainy pants. Don't present a problem unless you have a solution.
Complaining all the time, not posting solutions, like blah, 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 blah.
Now, in Floatplane Chat,
things that doesn't make you feel like part of the team.
In Floatplane Chat, they're saying the past decisions seem to be kind of a code word for ignoring this racially insensitive list of funny names for their customers that they used to have, or something like that. So it may be that basically they just wanted to get rid of people that were upset about certain aspects of their company's history and a pattern of insensitive behavior.
Yeah, see, like I don't know those types of details about this kind of stuff.
The thing is, like, at the end of the day, you cannot treat people like human resources. And when I say, I use even just the term human resources, how disgusting is that, right? You're basically resources. We use the word resources to describe things like, you know, things like iron ore in the side of a mountain, inanimate objects. And the only reason I use that term is because, in the interest of clear communication with other human beings, I use the universally understood terms to describe things instead of trying to come up with my own, you know, snowflake names for things. But I do find it pretty disrespectful, honestly, to refer to people as human resources. And I think that a successful company that has this attitude that people are sort of easily replaceable and disposable, I think
it's not. I don't think it's good for anyone. Yeah, I don't think it feels good for the employees. I don't think it feels good for owners. I think if an owner feels like their employees are like easy replaceable, like cartridges, basically, then they're probably pretty detached from the company at that point.
Right. People are suggesting we can make HR human relations. I mean, that really sounds like some kind of like sex orgy cult or something to me.
I was gonna say that sounds like a little too intimate.
Hey, you guys wanna go to Club Human Relations on Saturday night? I don't know.
You guys want to? Yeah, I don't know. I was gonna try to make a joke about Keep Talking and Nobody Explodes because I want to have a Floatplane game night where we play that soon, but I couldn't make it work.
Oh boy. Anyway, why don't we go ahead and talk about another topic here? How about something
anyways,
tech?
Side note thing, I guess. If you're looking to hire developers, especially mobile ones, a bunch of them just entered the market. So good luck.
I know, right?
Seriously though, like a lot. There's a lot of Twitter posts about like, hey, so I'm gonna like go vacation for 2 weeks, but then I'm looking for a job. There's a lot of them. So yeah, scoop them up.
All right, so much Samsung, very wow, plus 3050 Ti. Samsung's April Unpacked event was this week. They showed off some new laptops with freaking amazing looking OLED panels. They're based off the same tech as the screen in the, they are apparently based off the same tech as the screen in the S21 Ultra, but in practice, it's pretty different. We looked at the 15-inch Galaxy Book on short circuit. It looks pretty freaking awesome, although the chassis stiffness was a bit of a letdown. Hopefully on the 13-inch 360 model, it's a bit better. But check this out. This is a really different looking. This is a really different looking
It's odd.
subpixel
Yeah.
arrangement. So you're looking at the Pixel 5 right now. It's very similar on the S21 Ultra. And then right here, you're looking at the Samsung Galaxy Book Pro. So they say it's like, oh, based on the S21 Ultra, but it looks like very, very different. So we're used to seeing green pixels outnumber the other ones by 2 to 1 almost, I think, if I recall correctly. It's like half green and then 25% each of the others, if I recall correct, Tamal. But instead, what we're looking... No, actually, hold on. I'm having a look at the matrix here. Everyone, yeah. No, I think that is actually right. Yes, but this is way heavier on blue subpixels. But then the green and red ones look significantly brighter. This is definitely going to require some more investigation. In practice, apparently it looks like really good, though. They announced...
it looks very odd in this sample, though.
Yeah, I haven't seen one like that before. They also announced their Galaxy Odyssey gaming laptop that features NVIDIA's until now unannounced 3050 Ti. We don't have a lot of info about it because they haven't actually officially announced that GPU, but the leaks suggest it will have 4 gigs of memory. Given that the laptops come with a 135-watt charger, don't expect too much in terms of performance, but you could expect decent battery life, and they have 11th gen Intel CPUs, which might be good, but are probably just fine. And that's about it. There actually kind of wasn't really that much. But hey, Apple's next M series SoC has apparently entered mass production, according to Nikkei Asia sources. The next generation of Apple Silicon processors have entered mass production this month, and it is tentatively being referred to as M2. That surprises me. I would have thought it would be like M1 like plus or something, like Gen 1, but like more better. So maybe we'll go from M1 and M2.
Don't they usually start doing that later on?
M10 and M20? Like I don't know. So with their A series SoCs, they have, it's been A and then the number to indicate the generation. But what we're expecting is that M2 is going to be like a higher performance part intended for a different tier of system. It's on TSMC's 5 nanometer process, but beyond the actual manufacturing and a rough timeline, we don't know much and it hasn't been leaked. So there's speculation about it being 12 cores, 8 high performance, 4 low power, or 16 cores, 12 high performance and 4 low power, along with 16 GPU cores, but it's just speculation. Shipments could begin as early as July to be used in new MacBooks, but the chip will also see use in other products down the line, like the M1. With how good the M1 is, so yeah, I am very interested to see what their second kick at the can looks like.
It's good. It's exciting. Heck yeah.
Finally, do you want to talk us through the game stuttering, blame Windows?
Windows users have seen stuttering, flickering, and text rendering issues when playing certain games due to a recent Windows update. Oh boy. The fix was applied server-side last weekend, requiring no action from users. Just so you guys know. The problem, as well as outright crashes, were linked to the KB-5001-330 update and the previous KB-5842 update, with even an NVIDIA forum admin coming forward to recommend that folks try removing these updates to fix the bugs, which is kind of a big yikes, but you know, you got to do what you got to do to get those smooth frames.
Yep.
The 842 update was an optional update aimed at fixing performance and printing issues. Caused by the fact that printing
We're still fixing printers, Luke.
Solved. Yeah, the fact that that isn't just completely solved in 2021 is bonkers to me. But you know, printers still need fixing.
There's room for a disruptor, okay, Luke? There's room for a disruptive printer manufacturer. Like, seriously, instantly, I would buy the It Just Works and the refills are cheap printer. I'm in. I'm down.
Yeah, if someone can make that happen. Yeah.
The issue is probably just that like HP and whoever just own every related patent, and it would be basically impossible to build a printer. That's what I suspect is actually going on here.
That's probably right.
Total ignorance, though. Ignorance.
You could get around Windows by like using email to like receive the the printing jobs and like all this other kind of stuff. Just like completely avoid the old ways. But
remember,
yeah,
a lot of people
once
are
you get into the
printing
hardware stuff-
from Microsoft applications. I don't think the Office team would throw that kind of shade at the Windows team. Be like, hey, so we
Well,
noticed
no,
your print
no, no,
stack
no,
is
'cause
terrible.
you can do custom printing sources. So like you could see this part I think seems to work fine. But you know how you can do like Qt PDF where
Yeah.
you print to software?
Yeah.
You could print to software that emails it.
You
but
totally
I don't
could.
yeah.
I just mean that the Word team is not about to make that the default behavior.
Oh no, yeah. I don't know. I'm just trying to find weird ways of avoiding ways that stuff. Yeah, it's amazed me since I've been into computers how screwed printers have been, you know? So it's just like, I don't know, just abandon everything we've done this whole time and try to find a different way because it's clearly not working. But anyways, on the Microsoft support page, Microsoft says that a small subset of users have reported lower than expected performance, etc. However, this small subset seems to be an approximate 20% of users, which is pretty rough. That being said, it's more likely that users are going to come out upset than users are going to come out completely okay with it.
Yeah, and they
so
don't roll.
a reporting issue
They
here.
don't roll these updates worldwide instantly either. And once they start noticing problems, it's typical that they slow the rollout at least.
Yeah.
And I think the last one today is the Epic versus Apple court hearings start on Monday.
It's going to be interesting. We've been talking about this very consistently and for a long time, and now we're going to see some more movement on it.
It's just there's so much interesting stuff coming out because of this. Some of it even about Apple. So back in 2013. Senior Vice President of Internet Software and Services Eddie Q apparently wanted to bring iMessage to Android, championing the cause so that they wouldn't lose out to Google in the mobile messaging space, considering how they had already dominated in mail, video, etc. In response, the senior VP of software engineering politely expressed the difficulty Apple would have convincing users on the Android side to switch to iMessage. We'd need more than a marginally better app. Craig also expressed a concern that it would simply serve to remove an obstacle to iPhone families giving their kids Android phones. So here's something I still have a hard time wrapping my brain around. iMessage gets put on this pedestal as like the killer app, a killer app for iPhone. Why?
Yeah, I don't know. I saw this like series of tweets from someone saying that like denying iMessage to people that aren't on iPhone is like denying people like basic human resources. And by that I don't mean that reference. Yeah, that references to earlier in the show, but I meant like food and water and housing and like stuff like that. And it's just like, what are you even possibly talking about?
Yeah, I was Yvonne and I were talking about this on the way home from work the other day, and she's like, what? Well, I can't see how not having iMessage would interfere with anyone's social life or something like that. And I'm like, right, because you, my dear, would never have anyone in your life for any extended period of time who actually made decisions based on what kind of phone someone else had. But that like, doesn't mean those people are not out there.
I don't think I'm friends with anyone who would do that. I don't think.
Well, you wouldn't be able to because you're some kind of disgusting Android pleb.
Yeah.
Like,
and
gross.
Maybe that's why. I've heard of it being a thing. Like I've heard of the like, like why are your text bubbles this different color? I judge you because I'm a douchebag. I've heard of that stuff, but I've never experienced anything like that in my.
The Dreamstar says because it's there by default. You don't need your friends to install a third-party app.
It's text messaging.
It's text messaging.
Everything
Who cares?
has it by default.
And also, because you're
I think even that stupid watch that I reviewed had it by default.
Is your friend a moron? They don't know how to install an app? Why do they even have a smartphone?
It's unnecessary. Get a flip phone. Yeah.
What are you talking
Learn some
about?
T9. Yeah. The what was that thing called? Neptune Pine. I'm pretty sure the Neptune Pine had text messaging by
Of
default.
course
This
it
is not
did.
like a this is not an innovative thing.
Okay, Darkslayer asks, does iMessage do something special? All right, it has end-to-end encryption. Not the best on the market, but it is end-to-end encrypted. It has very robust support for media sharing. So very high quality picture sharing, low compression. That's a good thing. You can do your animojis or whatever. It has excellent support for things like stickers and all that kind of reaction crap. Excellent support for group messages. All things that lots of other apps. I guarantee you I could come up with apps most of you have never even heard of that have excellent support for all those things. Line, for example. Huge in Taiwan, basically irrelevant for much of the rest of the world. It's awesome. It's got lots of great features.
Other than China, which it's huge there as far as my understanding goes.
Line?
But, yeah.
I don't think so. I thought it's all WeChat in China.
Oh, maybe you're right. Yeah, okay.
I don't think so. WeChat's a steaming pile of garbage if they didn't have like a government enforced basically monopoly. Like there's so many features, there's so many things that you do through your WeChat account, like being able to, you know, pay for things and stuff like that. Like if it wasn't for that, I can't imagine them having the kind of market share that they do. But that's a whole separate conversation. Line is apparently big in Japan as well, according to Twitch chat. But yeah, Line's sweet. Yeah, Fresh Prince of whatever this is says iMessage is godly. Nope, it's just a messaging app. And it's actually the worst messaging app because it's not cross-platform. That makes it literally the worst messaging app. Any messaging app that is not cross-platform is like, why is it in my life exactly?
I genuinely, like, I feel like I need to sit down and like have a coffee with someone who genuinely thinks this stuff, just so I can like really get into their head so I can understand it. Because I have been whiffed this whole time. Like I genuinely have never understood. Okay. It has only seemed like a status symbol thing to me.
So, okay, that's it right there. The reason that you don't have a coffee with this person and can't get into their head is because you live in a completely different world, Luke. Because remember, the same kind of people that would decide, like I remember talking about this, I think it was on TechLinked, we might have talked about it on WAN Show, but your odds of being swiped, whatever the correct way is on Tinder, were something like 60+% higher if you had an iPhone in your profile picture versus having an Android phone. They like did a study on this.
Wow.
And the reason for it is that you as an Android pleb who doesn't give any cares about it, don't understand that there's a whole other group of people out there, none of whom you interact with because they wouldn't be caught dead talking to you, that really are that superficial, that will actually, you know, notice that I am wearing Costco jeans and not ask me for directions and instead ask someone else for directions who's wearing jeans from, I don't know, a store that things cost more money or something. So you have to understand that the blue bubble means a lot more than just you have an iPhone and support for emojis. None of that actually matters, which is why iMessage zealots can never actually explain without sounding like complete assholes why they care about iMessage. It's because the real reason is that they're a pompous douchebag, not because there's any other actual reason.
Yeah, and that's what it's felt like. But like people keep on trying to make arguments and none of them really make sense. So I keep on being like, this doesn't,
because they whether they know it or not, the actual reason is because they're elitist douche nozzles, not realizing that if I'm rocking a Galaxy Fold or whatever, my phone actually costs twice as much as theirs, and it has absolutely nothing to do with being some kind of pleb. Like I remember I tweeted about this a little while ago. Like you can get a blue bubble for like $75 on eBay. Having an iPhone doesn't mean anything except that it means that it was important enough to you to have an iPhone that you are that kind of shallow. That's all it means.
That would be really funny. I wouldn't even be surprised if there is someone out there who like mainlines an Android device.
Oh, it's a thing.
But knows...
Before you even finish, it's a thing. You route it through your iPhone to send to your iMessage peeps. And you just have an iPhone sitting plugged into a wall. It's totally a thing. I forget how to do it. But we talked about it when we were doing like
Oh my
Hackintosh or
goodness.
something. Like there's a whole,
Yeah.
it's a whole thing that you can do.
Wow.
MadPerfX says, Linus
that
is
should
judging
be-
our personal preferences. No, I'm judging other people's personal preferences.
Yes.
Being
Yeah.
an iMessage elitist means you are an asshole, and that's not a personal preference. That's a bad attitude. It's that simple. I don't care if you have an iPhone. That's the difference. If you care that someone else doesn't, then you're an asshole, and that's not an opinion. That's just you being judgmental. And I'm allowed to judge you for being judgmental. You don't just get to play the you're being judgmental card and I should accept your judgmentality or whatever the word is for that. That's not how it works. You know? It's like when someone walks up and kicks your dog and you punch them in the face. You are not the aggressor. They are. They had it coming.
Yeah. Yeah. I also love how the example of how to fix it is like the most stereotypically over the top, working around the solution way too hard, Android-y type of thing. Like rerouting your messages through this device that you just have planted there. All like, oh my goodness.
Well, whatever. I don't make the rules, man. What I do make the rules about is when we go through and read some super chats, because it's pretty much the end of the show. Robert Mail says, hybrid core Windows might be a mess. Hopefully, hopefully the Windows scheduler team can pull some experience from the Windows ARM team. Otherwise, the performance degradations will be Zen 1 all over again, but probably worse. You're probably right. But this time, because Intel will have done it first, and because AMD is a bigger player, we might see more optimization before the release of the product instead of after the release of the product. So we can hope for the best. Tropical, I love this. This is a bit of an inside joke for Crosscode fans, but the message is, hi, Leah. I love it. Thank you. Chappers says, hey guys, do you think people should have some kind of protection when it comes to digital downloads of games? Not that it would ever happen, but what if Steam went bust? I'd lose over 200 games. Doesn't Steam have a provision for that in their user license agreement?
No idea.
I'm actually not sure if they do, but yeah, that is the kind of thing that should probably be legislated. If a platform is going to go away, and it is an online-only platform, there should be an opportunity, some kind of grace period where you can download it and then have it forever. I don't know how they would administer that, but lawmakers sort of rarely worry about those kinds of minor details anyway, so they would just legislate it and let people figure out how to deal with it. We've run into all kinds of stuff like that with like international taxation for LTT Store and all of that, but separate conversation. Adam says, inflation has nothing to do with the rising cost of education. Didn't say it did. Inflation is sort of separate. But what I said was that those things are happening in parallel. The cost of living is going up and the cost of education is going up. And if you're a student, the cost of education is part of your cost of living. And then, okay, this is getting interesting. The state and federal governments were heavily subsidizing education, and much of those funds were eliminated in the 80s. I don't know if you noticed, but the state and federal government of the US and Canada are all still heavily subsidizing education. It's just we've cut it off at 12 now for some reason. And also, if our local Primo University, UBC, is anything to go by, they're also just making mad bank when I thought education was supposed to be about passing down knowledge. Have you seen the amount of Yvonne and I both went to UBC, and we went there on a date for our 10 years of dating anniversary. We went there, 15 years, I think. We didn't recognize the campus. Like, the amount of money they are spending when actually tuition could just be cheaper is incredible. And it's not on educational facilities necessarily. A lot of it is very commercial, very development centric. Let's build some apartments and then do 100-year leases so that we still own this land and effectively somebody else pays to put housing on this like endowment land that we were given 100 years ago or whatever. It's like pretty disgusting. Has nothing to do, maybe something to do with, but it is not as simple as there's not enough subsidies. And if the government's not subsidizing education enough, then I've got a sort of big question for you. Why the not? It's sort of the most important possible thing. Who is going to keep the economy going when you are retired? Right? Like, who is going to make it so your standard of living doesn't suck? A well-educated working class. Well, you can't get there unless you get the well-educated part.
Yeah.
Logan
And
says,
like,
oh yeah, go ahead.
as a society, you should kind of want that too, because more, not necessarily well informed, because that's not
I just
fair.
don't want to be surrounded by people who are like impossible to talk to. I mean,
Yeah.
how much is that? That's not unreasonable. That's one of the reasons I started a company and then hired all people that I'd want to actually spend my day with. It's such a small thing to ask.
Yeah, and like these are people that are in the voting sphere as well, and like all this kind of stuff. So yeah. And I'm not saying, just before anyone jumps on that either, I'm not saying like your education has to be like an English degree. Like extended education could be a trade, it could be whatever. But yeah,
Well, yeah, education can absolutely, that it's all education. Education can be a first aid course for all I care. Just
sure. Yeah,
investing in education is valuable.
learning new skills and expanding your knowledge base in general, those things are very valuable to society as a whole. It doesn't necessarily matter, like I'm not trying to compare learning how to do various forms of maths versus learning how to weld. Like it doesn't matter to me. Those resources being readily available to your citizens is extremely valuable.
So, what else? What else do we got here? Logan says, I'm 20 and I live in the Lower Mainland. I have no hope of living in my area in the future. Yeah, pretty much. Unless it all crashes. Hey, let's see how we go. Justin says, please tell me why you said NVIDIA copied R-Bar from AMD when it's part of the PCI Express standard, but now saying AMD didn't copy Intel's hybrid solution. Come on, be consistent and fair. It's a headline, man. Get over it. NVIDIA copied AMD in actually bothering to implement it. It's been part of the PCI Express for a long time. And I said AMD didn't copy Intel's hybrid solution because ARM did it first. There. Mal says, any plans for a second kids book? My son's been obsessed with it for bedtimes lately, and now I can recite every line off the top of my head. That's hilarious because even I have not memorized it. Yeah, I think the second one's going to be counting with computers. We're going to have some fun with the what's a computer thing, and it'll be everything's a computer. So we'll be counting.
Will that be a little outdated by then?
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter because it'll be a fun rhyme, and it'll be just an inside joke for people who like get it or whatever. And then every page will be a different kind of computer because computers are all around us, right? So we'll start with ones that are maybe more traditional, like a desktop computer. One desktop computer, two laptops, 3 tablets, 4 smartwatches, whatever. So you kind of keep going, and I think that's a pretty low-hanging fruit, kind of easy one for me to do. I've been really busy lately. I haven't had any time to work on it, but I think that's going to be the next concept. So like you'll have the ABC one, and then we'll do a counting one, and then maybe we'll do, shapes and colors, like all that kind of stuff. But it's going to take time. We are way past our break-even point for our initial order of ABCs of gaming, though. So I consider it a success already, and it is likely to continue. We've sold over 10,000 copies. Like, it's incredible, actually. I really appreciate everyone's support. And when I mentioned that it was on Amazon, I think it was 2 shows ago, Luke? Something like that. Immediately, the maximum amount we were allowed to stock there, which is 150 units, were gone. And you guys have been leaving reviews on it, which is really incredible. Obviously, that helps a lot. And then I think I was talking about this on the last show. Amazon was like, hey, recommended restock, 900 units. By the way, you can't have more than 595 units. So we sent 595, and we're probably going to blow right through them.
Awesome. That's cool.
Tech Kev says, lost chance to get on the property ladder in the early 2000s. Yeah, pretty much. Daniel says, I want to use a Git repo off a NAS. Do you know any way to do that without intolerable latency? Bandwidth is great, but dealing with hundreds of thousands of tiny files takes forever. I mean, other than moving to fiber optics and not using TCP IP, like finding a different protocol that works for you, no, not really.
Well, what's your NAS? Because people run... Yeah.
Oh yeah, it might be a really slow, like crappy NAS. Going SSD would help a lot.
Yeah, like there's a difference between a NAS, which is like a computer that you built that has storage on it that you put on your network, and like a little Synology box,
like some 8-year-old like QNAP thing.
Yeah.
Kinestic says, have you seen any of the backlash about the latest YouTube app update and the default video quality stuff? I can't say that I have. Not Even a Real Channel says, hey, on your EK Waterblocks active backplates vid, you talked about how the VRAM was getting ridiculously hot on a Zotac 3090 Trinity. The Founders Edition has heatsinks on both sides. So does the Zotac. But we removed it to make it easier to get the thermal images. It was slightly cooler with the backplate. It doesn't make as much of a difference as you might think. All right, there's some stuff in here. Austin says, any update on the Verified Actual Gamers versus Linus event? Yes. We have already run it. The video is coming soon. I believe it's going to hit Floatplane in early access, which has not been a week lately. I'm sorry. We're trying. No, it looks like it is a simultaneous release on the 4th. So Floatplane is getting the gaming phone roundup this weekend, along with Ryzen 4750G review. And wait. Okay, I don't know what's going on. It looks like the schedule is broken. I will have to, I'll have to find out what's going on with that. Okay. And that's pretty much it. Thank you very much for tuning in to the WAN show. We will see you again next week. Same bad time, same bad channel. I hope you guys enjoyed. Oh, Jaden says in the Floatplane chat, if you hate the YouTube quality thing, try Floatplane. Heck yeah.
Hey,
Heck
solved.
yeah, man.
Problem
All right.
solved.
See y'all later, guys.
Bye. Are we still live?
Oh, yeah.